Good day, Internet. This is DTNS Live for Thursday, March 20th, 2025. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
From Columbus, Ohio, I'm Robb Dunewood.
And I'm Roger Chang, the show's producer.
Daily Tech News Show Live is made possible by its listeners thanks to all of you, including Chris Benetow, Jeffrey Zilks, Alo or Adam L., and our new patron, Douglas.
Hey, Douglas. I was just telling the folks before we got on the horn here today, I think we've gotten at least one new patron all this week, which is, it just
which is great.
It's awesome. Yes. I mean, nothing better than a new patron. So Douglas and everybody else who's joined us recently, thank you so much for being here. And thank you to all of you to be joining us on DTNS Live. This is the show where we discuss the tech news to help us all understand it a little bit better. We go through the news. We a fine-tooth comb, as it were, and try to make sense of it. And it's always better as a show with your input as well. So how y'all doing out there? Robb Dunewood, what's going on in Columbus?
So I was, Roger actually asked me how I was doing earlier, so I had to tell him the 13-minute diatribe about why I don't have straight lines behind me and my ADD is kicked in, and it's bothering me because I'm not parallel or perpendicular rather to the wall behind me, and my camera is shooting it like an off angle, so I can't get my line straight.
I would never have noticed that.
Over my right arm, how that line is like crooked like that. It just really gets me. I
know how you feel. I mean, look at the built-ins behind me. They're never straight. Yeah. They're never perfectly straight.
But that's how you know it's real.
And they are. I mean, they're definitely real. I didn't put them in there. I don't know. Whoever lived here before me were like, let's do a wall of built-ins. I'm like, it's kind of a podcast studio that you made for me, so thank you. But yes, I know what you mean about the lions. I mean, Roger, your studio area has been the same for, I think, the entire time that we've been doing the show.
There's a convergence into my head. If you remember Mr. Zettel's class in back at
I do, Herb Zettel. Yeah.
You have the vectors. You have the vectors moving toward my head, which is my face, which is good. At least
Roger and I went to the same college. That's what he's referencing.
We took the same classes.
Exactly. We did. We did. We were in the same College of Creative Arts. They called it. But
Broadcast Creative Arts. Yes.
Yes. Well, that seems like a long time ago, but it was only a couple of years ago because I'm 29 years old.
You're so young.
I know. Yeah. I know. I can't imagine what it feels like to be over 40. But that is neither here nor there. We are here to talk tech news, so let's get into it with the quick hits.
SoftBank announced it's acquiring Ampere Computing, founded by former Intel president Renee James for $6.5 billion cash. Ampere initially focused on cloud-native computing and now develops high-performance ARM processors for AI. SoftBank says ARM's R&D will benefit from the acquisition, and Ampere will remain wholly owned subsidiary if the deal closes later this year.
Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang said that the company plans to buy several $100 billion worth of U.S.-made chips and electronics over the next 4 years from suppliers like TSMC and Foxconn. This is meant not only to avoid tariffs, because a lot of companies are trying to figure that out, but also strengthen supply chain resilience. Huang says U.S. policies supporting AI infrastructure would benefit data center development. Ampere, which is now under SoftBank, of course, if the deal goes through, would also contribute to NVIDIA's AI goals.
According to new data from Ookla, Apple's new C1 modem in the iPhone 16e outperforms Qualcomm's modem in key areas like low signal conditions and faster median download and upload speeds on AT&T and Verizon. On T-Mobile, however, Ookla found that Qualcomm's modem had faster top speeds and better median speeds. Overall, the C1 showed stronger real-world performance, especially where connectivity was more challenging overall.
I imagine if you're a T-Mobile person right now, you're like, excuse.
That sucks for them. Yeah.
What's going on? But yeah, it sounds like the new C1 for a lot of people performing really well. Meta is launching its AI chatbot on WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger in 41 European countries and 21 territories this week. after delaying the rollout due to privacy concerns raised by Ireland's regulator. Although the chatbot launched in the US back in 2023, the European version will only support text-based chat for now. Meta also paused deploying its multimodal Llama AI model in the EU over regulatory issues.
Ghost, an open source newsletter alternative to Substack, has integrated with the Fediverse using the ActivityPub protocol, which powers platforms like Mastodon and PixelFed. This gets Ghost publishers to share posts across federated platforms for better reach and engagement. Ghost first announced its ActivityPub plans last year.
Yeah, so they finally did it. OpenAI released OI Pro, a more powerful version of its O1 Pro, a more powerful version of its O1 reasoning AI model, available through its API to select developers. It is pricey at $150 per million input tokens and $600 per million output tokens, twice the input cost and 10 times the output cost of GPT 4.5. O1 Pro offers more reliable responses, says the company, though early tests showed only slight improvements over O1 in coding and math. Apple TV Plus. You might subscribe to it, you might not. It is losing over $1 billion annually, despite reaching 45 million subscribers. This is according to a report in the Information. Since launching in 2019, so it's new-ish, Apple has spent over $5 billion yearly on content, though it did cut $500 million back in 2024. We talked about that at the time, the fact that trimming the fat a little bit internally at Apple TV+. CEO Tim Cook has reportedly questioned costly deals like the $200 million movie Argylle, which didn't end up bringing in a lot of subscribers, maybe a few, but, didn't move the needle enough. Apple's services, which is a department that Apple TV Plus is part of, includes Music, News Plus, Fitness Plus, facing low growth overall. iCloud Plus driving the most Apple One subscriptions. Apple One subscription, if you might recall, can bundle a lot of these in a pricier but overall less expensive model if you want a few of these services rather than just one. Apple TV Plus remains under 1% of U.S. streaming market share. Now, I am a subscriber. There are a few Apple TV Plus shows that I cannot miss. I need them in my life. Severance being the most latest. The Morning Show, Ted Lasso, others. But I wanted to ask the panel. Apple is, as we all know, a company with a lot of money. You can throw away a lot of money at capital expenditures if you think that this is a long bet. But what do we think if Apple TV Plus is really under 1% of the streaming market? And again, this is U.S. based, but that has a lot of growth to get to.
I think that when we say Apple is losing $1 billion a year on this, Apple is one of those companies that probably can, at least for a while, afford to lose $1 billion on this. I am what you would call a serial churner. I will quit a streaming platform if I haven't watched anything on it for 4 weeks or so. Apple has just made it into the realm of where I don't cancel it every time I get done watching whatever it is that I'm watching on it. There's enough content on there now that I'm pretty much watching at least one thing every single month. And I think that they're trying to play the long game. It's like we have some really good content over here. We have people who, like Robb, will churn off of us. They probably can see metrics where people like me are staying on their platform longer. And I think they're really in it for the long haul because this isn't necessarily a quick game. They're not going to be Netflix overnight. They're not going to be Prime Video or Hulu or these giant services overnight. It's going to take them some time. And I think that they are figuring out how to do that with a mix of good television programs and maybe pulling it back a little bit on the big blockbuster movies that has not really been their thing.
I think they suffer from not necessarily having a clear focus of where they want to be. Like they know they have this thing, they have this platform, and they know they do want to be associated with high quality, or at least, high quality productions, whether or not the actual shows get any views. But, the company churned out $391 billion last year for the 2024 financial year. So this is $1 billion lost is sort of a drop in the bucket in the big scheme of things. But I mean, is Apple using Apple TV Plus as sort of a carrot to get people to invested in all the rest of Apple's ecosystem, whether it's other services that don't seem to be tracking as well, or other products where it's sort of the loss leader, right? It's the Costco roast chicken. It's $5, for a roast chicken at Costco. It doesn't cost.
But you're going to get all that peanut butter on your way out.
Yeah, exactly. They have you in the store to buy other stuff. So is that what they want to do with it? To me, as someone who sort of like is just big toe in the water with most streaming services in terms of how much I'm like invested in, like Hulu, Netflix, and Amazon are pretty much it. But I will bounce, as with Rob, I churn in and out. Apple TV Plus doesn't have a lot for me outside of maybe few key shows, but those key shows aren't worth me paying the money that they want for it versus Hulu, where there's stuff for my wife, there's stuff for me, and there's stuff for my kids because it's Disney, Hulu, the whole bundle. Same thing with Netflix, and of course Amazon with Prime. You get it, and I take advantage of their Prime delivery service much more than I do their video service.
Yeah, same. This kind of reminds me so when HBO was, I don't know, when HBO first launched, I was young and I didn't have cable, and HBO to me it was like something that I would hear like, oh, there's a big boxing match, you can only get it on HBO, for people who have cable. It was like, ooh, that seems like a cool thing. And there were movies that you could get on, home box office, as it was known at the time. And it was, that was a very, sort of prestige television, but you pay for it type of thing. Again, this is like rabbit ears days where the rest of us were like, wow, cable would be so cool. But I feel like Apple TV Plus is in the early stages of what it wants to be the next HBO. For example, when Game of Thrones, was at the height of its popularity, people would subscribe to HBO streaming, or in a cable package specifically to watch that show. However, it had so many series that were in the library. It's like, well, you're here. Maybe you start The Wire from scratch. That's going to take you months to get through. The Sopranos. There are a variety of movies that Apple TV Plus doesn't have that yet. It could get there if Apple wants to double down on this whole situation, because you're gonna amass a library that is exclusive to Apple. I think that Apple's never going to get anywhere near any of these other services that just license content from a variety of places.
I mean, let's just be honest here. It's a snob appeal that Apple is looking for with Apple TV, with their programming. All right, there's definitely sort of a like, hey, we're not like the others. I mean, if you look at Apple Music, and what they offer, they're not as picky as I would see it, right? They're not saying only these artists can be on our platform because they speak to our rarefied audience that is, more refined and has more sophisticated taste. It's like, no, we offer a wide gamut of musical genres, of musical artists to fulfill everyone's taste. Maybe they should try that on Apple Plus if that's something they want to do. The fact that they don't do that tells me that it's less about the bottom dollar and more about just trying to cultivate an image and a sense of.
But that's Apple in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
Apple
but understand that's what you get, right? If you only appeal to a limited segment of people, you're not going to get the same view eyeballs that you get with Hulu, Disney, with Paramount or any of the other streaming services, Netflix, Amazon Plus, all that, because you're not offering a deep well of content that satisfies everyone's craving.
I mean, for example, sorry, Rob, go ahead.
I don't look at it like that. I look at it like this. Severance is really good. I like to watch it, so I get Apple. Foundation, really good. I like to watch it, so I use Apple. Silo, really good. I like to watch it, so I get Apple. So I'm not thinking about all the other stuff that is on there. That never really comes into my mind. Is there something that I want to watch that I can only get on that platform? and it's worth it to me to pay the subscription. That's kind of where my mind goes on this. And I think that Apple knows that that's how most of their customers probably think. And that's why I say I think they're in for the long game. It's like we're going to have some really, really good content on here that people are going to pay for to watch this one thing, as compared to being concerned about a catalog the size of what Netflix or some of these other platforms would have.
And I would say they would probably be better off just selling those as they used to sell seasons, of a show, instead of buying, because it makes no sense to put in the subscription model. If I wanted to buy all of Foundation, just let me buy all of it, and then I'll never subscribe to Apple Plus, because all I wanted was Foundation. But the whole point of offering this subscription to this platform is to give you like a nice melange of different things. But I mean, there's so much stuff to watch already. I'm not going to spend out more money on a different platform
100%.
if I can't.
Yeah,
if
there's
I
only
can't
so many
squeeze both
hours
out.
in the day
Yeah.
that you can dedicate to
And
watching content.
And I have Hulu Disney because I have kids. I like the Star Wars stuff. My kids like everything else. So.
Yeah. I mean, to your point about Severance, Rob, I mean, I'm a big Severance fan. I mean, maybe not the biggest in the world, but I'm up there. Yeah. I'm in the upper 10%. And even so, I have friends who were like, would I like the show? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's a specific kind of show. And if you want it, great. But I wouldn't necessarily be like, yeah, you should subscribe to Apple TV Plus for this show or that show. In fact, all of their offerings, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's a very personal decision. The kind of stuff that you want, the kind of stuff you want to pay for, and the library that you might get. That's just sort of like an add-on from any of these platforms. Before we move on, Bloomberg sources say that Vision Pro creator Mike Rockwell will take over for running Siri, which is being removed from AI head John Giannandrea. Rockwell will report to Craig Federighi. All right, Rob, moving on to OpenAI. ChatGPT is facing another privacy complaint in the EU. So what's the latest?
So yes, Sarah. So ChatGPT, due to its tendency to hallucinate false information, is in a little bit of trouble. So privacy rights advocacy group Noib is supporting an individual in Norway who found ChatGPT falsely claiming he had been convicted of murdering 2 of his children and attempting to kill the 3rd.
Oh dear.
There have been other privacy complaints about ChatGPT generating incorrect personal data, such as birth dates or biographical data. But in the case of, and I want to make sure I get this name right, but I think it is pronounced Hjalmar Holman, the chatbot created a fictitious legend about erroneous crimes, or just horrendous crimes that never happened. So just the fact that ChatGPT can offer up such convincing hallucinations is bad enough, but OpenAI doesn't really give you a way to, for individuals to go in there and correct that stuff if there is stuff in there that's wrong. And this is where they get in trouble in the EU with GDPR rules, which gives Europeans a host of data access rights, including rectification of personal data. So I just wanted to open up to you guys. What do you think, when it comes to chatbots, in this case specifically ChatGPT? You go and you ask it a question and it could give you, not just the wrong information, it could literally almost be libelous against someone in the information it is creating. I know that they have a little disclaimer at the bottom saying that you have to take these results with a grain of salt, but it seems like stuff like this is pretty horrible. This person's from a small town, and literally the town was thinking that this person had committed, double homicide.
Yeah, I mean, if I search for myself using Google search, let's say, which I do, I don't know, a couple times a year, right? Like what's floating to the top here? If there was something like that, I would, I can't personally scrub it from Google, but I can offer a complaint to the company and be like, I'm this person, this is wrong, here's the source, let's fix it. I've actually done that a couple of times, but not anything like this. That would be potentially, think about it. You're looking for a new job. You're starting a new life somewhere else. Like whatever you're doing, that is the kind of information, if not true, is extremely damaging. And if it were me, I'd be like, I'm gonna file a lawsuit against the company. That's really bad. That's not like, oh, they said Sarah was 37 when she's really 36. It's like, no, you can't say stuff like that.
But the difficulty with this is this isn't just on a site somewhere. This isn't for anyone to see. You have to actively interrogate the system in order to
But
get
what if this person was looking for a job and you were like, let's just kind of see what ChatGPT pulls up?
I mean, let me ask you, if it's consistently the same story about the same murders, about all the same stuff, it hallucinates again and again. If it's just once or maybe twice over a course of like 10 queries about this individual, I don't know. I mean, then you could just say like, well, maybe you shouldn't use ChatGPT to search on prospective employees because it's known to be fictitious. Part of it is, because the output isn't consistent over time, right? Like I just asked who Roger Chang is to ChatGPT. It says he's the producer of the Vergecast, which is something I've never done. When I asked for links the second time, so give me links to sources, it links me to DTNS, and it gives me all the information about DTNS. So it's not replicating that erroneous information the second time around. If I did this 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 more times, do I, if it's under like 10%, is it okay? If it's over 10%, I mean, the thing is the fact that it gets wrong is part of what the service or what the tool does.
Sure. Well, but imagine somebody's sort of like, real quick, like Roger's going to be on our podcast, talking about technology. Like, who is Roger? Oh, he produces the Vergecast. And then they introduce you that way, and you're like, way to do your research. That kind of stuff. I mean, that's what makes all this stuff sloppy pretty quickly. I also feel like I have, not that I'm like the world's biggest ChatGPT expert, but back in the early days, if I was like, hey, summarize the story, I would put a link in there. Let's say it's a link to The Verge. And, I would get some information and it would just hallucinate because what I was doing was just simply feeding the link, not a bunch of text. Now, if you go into that story that the link references and just copy and paste the entire thing in on that page and then run it through ChatGPT, it gets better. But you still have like weird links to other stories. Sometimes it's comments that are embedded into that page. It's all stuff that can throw the whole thing off. What you really have to do is strip out everything except the text of something that you want summarized. Now, of course, I'm just talking about what I do. Everyone uses these models differently, but that you get different answers if you do things those 3 different ways. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They're just like, ChatGPT is making up stuff. It's like, well, because you're giving it a bunch of text that it's trying to make sense of that you actually don't want it to be part of your eventual answer.
Yeah, so this, for me personally, is a problem because it's basically saying, if I say, ChatGPT, why did you hit me upside the head? And it replies back, because you didn't ask the question properly. That is problematic because people are now starting to use this as a search engine. They're going in and they're doing research in this. And the answers that these things get, in this case particular, ChatGPT, the answers that it gives you back, it gives it back to you. It's saying it with its chest. It believes that this is what the truth is, even though it's completely hallucinated. There was no truth to it. Now, in this particular article, there were some things. This person did have 3 children. They all 3 were boys. He is from the town that they said that this happened in. But the problem is that none of the things that it said that happened were actually true. He had never killed his children. He had never attempted to kill a third. He had never been convicted to serve 22 years, which is the maximum penalty that he could have gotten for these crimes, where he is from. That is problematic to me. If you have a lot of people that are going to start using these things to ask it questions, and I think that that's what ChatGPT wants. They've created, their chat or they've created their search version of ChatGPT. We see that other, platforms are doing this as well. If you can't trust the information, in fact, there's a Columbia Journalism Review article out. And it basically, is letting folks know that you can't trust these things ever, because most of the time they're incorrect. Over half the time, I think it was 64% of the time, you can feed these things direct quotes and you will get back hallucinations. Some of them are worse than other. Perplexity was actually right more times than not. But on average, most of these things do not give you, they don't give you factual information
they're
when
not,
you ask them for factual things.
They're not facts machines. They're not fact
machines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fact machines. And I think people should have a much better understanding of what they're using and what they're getting back. I mean, trying to use I know Justin Robert Young loves harping on the fact that the future of search is large language models. I don't agree, and the reason why is because I get different varying levels of qualitative answers, either from the standard Google search or one in ChatGPT or any other chatbot, because the information the information it's trained on is going to be of an uneven quality, right? If I'm looking for the best auto mechanic for my car, which I managed to track down through Google search after like 30 minutes, is a much better one than the one that ChatGPT gives me, which ends up being all car dealerships. And so, until that's worked out, I think there's always going to be this sort of skepticism of a lot of these large language models when it comes to information, especially when it does really wild hallucinations, and people maybe will have a much lower level of trust because of it.
Well, folks, what do you want to hear us talk about on the show? One way to let us know is on our subreddit. Submit your stories and vote on them at www.reddit.com/r/dailytechnewsshow.
Mixing kids and technology in the classroom is an ongoing discussion, especially when it comes to educational outcomes. If you don't have any tech, are you falling behind? If you have too much tech, are the kids really paying attention? Michael Bloomberg has thoughts, doesn't he, Roger?
Yes, Michael Bloomberg wrote an opinion piece on Bloomberg, surprise, surprise, about what he considers to be the negative effects of having too much class time. He says screen time, but he also means laptops in the classroom, where he feels that a lot of these lessons, a lot of the coursework is taught through a laptop. His main argument is that the use of these devices, or rather intensive use of these devices in classrooms, is correlated with diminishing performance. That means lower language skills, poor math skills, poor interpersonal relationships with other classmates. And he recommends schools reconsider their policies around in-class computers in the same way that people in institutions have begin to look at smartphones as being more of a disruption than a help in the classroom, and so they've started implementing policies limiting their use. And he thinks that something should be done with laptops, at least in planning for coursework. Now, what I came away from this one is that like in the case of my kids, they do use tablets in school, and they also use Chromebooks that they borrow loan out from school.
The school provides, right?
That the school provides, that we use it at home for homework, for some homework assignments, not all homework assignments. And what I find is that typically when schools lean on technology, it's usually because they are deficient in other areas, usually funding. That means funding for more teachers, funding for the types of teaching material that they would need, say, for like a science class. You don't have enough beakers, you don't have enough of the Bunsen burners, you don't have all the stuff that kids would need to carry out a
so
basic.
You do some digital version of that.
Yeah. So let's do it virtually, right? It's cheaper, right? Because the great pitch of technology to classrooms is save money, right? But you can do just the same things, except virtually. You don't have the mess. You don't have to worry about buying consumable products. And I think
you don't have to dissect an actual frog, which I had to do in sixth grade.
When I was in high school, there was a software program for the Apple II GS that allowed you to digitally dissect a frog in case there were students that had some sort of ethical or
right. Yeah,
religious
the parents
thing about
were like, we're not doing that. Yeah.
And so that I think that's always started off the great debate of like, well, virtual education is just as good as in classroom on hands-on approach. And as we saw over the pandemic, maybe not so much, right? And I think, while I agree with Michael Bloomberg on the fact that test scores and rescores have dropped, I don't think correlation equals causation. And in this case, I think it's more of a confirmation bias. He sees these schools using technology and saying, aha, that's the reason why, instead of saying, why are you guys always using technology instead of having real instruments that kids can play in their music classes, using real art supplies so they can paint, they can draw, they can make collages. Like, I think he might be looking at the wrong thing.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, or even what Bloomberg is saying here. I think that what he's saying is accurate, but as you said, Roger, is it the causation that is the problem? And I think that is not so sure. One of the issues is that schools don't have a lot of money. A lot of schools don't. Most schools don't. Many do, but a lot of schools just don't have enough money for the teachers. They don't have enough money for the actual textbooks. They don't have enough money for those beakers. They don't have enough money to hire the science teacher that could actually run the actual experiments in a lab. Sometimes it's a teacher that it's just as new to them as it is to the students, because they are also for the first time doing this on a actual computer as compared to doing it in a classroom, to where you've got to have some skill set with that. So I think that, what is he saying? Yes, he's definitely saying that scores are down, but I like you, Roger, believe that there are many, many other reasons that probably jump in front of screen time when it comes to this, because this article was very specific. It wasn't necessarily talking just about phones. It was talking about the laptops. It was talking about the Chromebooks. It was talking about the tablets that are actually used for doing coursework, not just doing whatever you want to do when you're not doing coursework.
I also think that, and I never had a laptop or a cell phone until I got to college, and even then, it was not a smartphone. I mean, it was
just a phone.
Right, yeah, and I mean, like two people had them. It was not something that you were using in school to help you out at all. But I do think that the kinds of classes we're talking about differ, right? If you're in math class, I mean, think about math class. It's like you got your notebook in front of you, we're going through equations. It's a very solitary exercise. You're not doing a lot of like collab with everyone else. If you've got a laptop in front of you, rather than something that you're writing, down with a pen and paper, even though arguably people say that you retain information when you write it down, longhand, that is, I don't think that really, it doesn't, I don't know, turn on some sort of like, ooh, scary light bulb to me. When you talk about something like chemistry, going back to like beakers and petri dishes and biology and stuff where traditionally, students are, working in groups and teams and that kind of thing. And if there isn't a physical version of that a teacher can, especially if you've got a big class, you got too many kids, you can't give them all individual attention, that does change the way that kids are taught. Doesn't mean that they're not learning the same stuff, but they are being taught a different way.
And, and I do want to stress this. My experience, technology can be a great boost. But, I will agree with the one thing he did say that struck out to me, is that technology needs to be more of a supplement and not a replacement. And oftentimes when you are financially short-strapped, you tend to try to maximize the benefit of everything you have available to you. And sometimes that's a tablet or a laptop, and that's showing you a video of how a math problem is done or solved, even though the student cannot then go forth and ask the video, oh, how did you come up with that answer? I understand this part of the equation, but I don't understand that part. And, it's as things evolve, calculators didn't make us all stupid, or at least most of us. And when it comes to just basic arithmetic, I still know how to add, hopefully. And it is a little. So
do I. But I mean, how often do you just like launch the calc app and be like, let's just like divide this really quick because?
Well, it's because
I don't
you
know.
don't
I'm thinking
trust
about
yourself.
so many other things right now.
I pull up the slide rule every week, Sarah. I don't know what you're talking about.
And and this is the thing. Again, my kids are actually very social. They have recess, and recess is and one of those great things where all the kids come together and they form their little play groups and they play.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the interaction between students happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what teachers are doing these days, but in the past, it was very discouraged. You're talking during class, you're going to get a check mark on the board. You get 3 check marks, you have to go to the principal's office because you're disruptive and being too social outside of recess. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm dating myself, but that's what used to happen at my school.
Well, you're not that old. You're only 26, right?
I'm 29.
Oh, 29.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay,
Thank you,
yeah.
Rob. That's very kind of you. All right, so we're moving on to something else involving children, but extremely different. TikTok is partnering with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC, to display real-time Amber Alerts in users' For You feeds. Now, for those of you outside of the U.S., in the U.S., Amber Alert stands for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response, basically abducted children. And when something like that is sent to authorities, then those of us who have smartphones, and many of us do, you get a sort of screeching alert that is very much like emergency, emergency, if you are deemed to be in the area where you might be able to help. So Amber Alerts, part of life, and I always do my best to pay attention to them. However, if an alert is active in a user's area on TikTok, key details like the child's photo, description, and last known location will appear. If you get the same Amber Alert via text message, which is the way that my phone works now, you just kind of get like a little, not even a paragraph really. It's sort of just like, Toyota Camry, white, license plate. You're kind of like, well, I mean, if I see that, of course I'll try to help, but doesn't really give you all that much information to try to be part of the solution. A Texas pilot of the feature on TikTok generated over 20 million views and 2.5 million visits to NCMEC's website. Now, TikTok says it's going to provide ad credits to boost NCMEC's outreach, just kind of a do-gooder thing. Since so many people get their news from TikTok, this is my question for you, Rob and Roger. How do we all feel about this strategy?
I'm a fan. One of the reasons I'm a fan, because Amber Alerts work. And most people who are getting them on their cell phone. And like you said, Sarah, they are only just the text messages, maybe a description and a license plate. If you're going to get rich text in a social media platform like TikTok, and it's going to be doubled up, because chances are if you're looking at TikTok and you get the alert, you're probably on your phone, which means you probably just got the alert on the phone as well. And then it is reinforced with the actual Amber Alert that comes in through TikTok, and there's more context. It might make you look up and say, oh, that's a white truck. Is the license plate match? These things work. They have absolutely shown that they work here in the United States. So I am a fan of this. It reminds me of when I was a kid and we would get the emergency broadcast that came on terrestrial television, and they would always do the test like at 2:00 in the morning when the regular channels went off before the infomercials and stuff started to come on. These things work, so I think that if you can make it in a way to where they're going to even work better, I am all for that, because the goal for this is to find children that have been abducted.
Yeah, I mean, there are intrusive alerts sometimes that come in through my phone where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what was that? An Amber Alert is never, and I don't know, I mean, your mileage may vary, but I'm never going to be angry about that. And if I can help, I want that.
And it works based on geography, like your location data, so not your phone number. So if you have an area code for an area where an abduction has occurred, but you live on the other side of the country, you're not going to get it.
Right. Yeah. It's IP address based.
I mean, it's definitely something that I think has been needed solely because a lot of people no longer use traditional broadcast mediums like TV or radio, and so a lot of the emergency messages you used to get and people used to turn into because they were listening to the morning show on the radio on their commute to work, or they were watching TV
you get
at home.
This is an alert of the emergency broadcast system.
You don't get those anymore because you're on a platform like TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, And I think it would be better served if there was a regulation that outlined how all of them should be able to do this. So when, say, YouTube wants to implement something, the look, the feel is similar, so people will not be confused if they're on if they're on a different platform.
Yeah. I mean, there's this ongoing, and I know it's definitely the younger set on TikTok specifically. Although you could argue, YouTube, Instagram, all have skew a little bit younger as well. But TikTok in particular, so many folks say, "Yeah, this is how I get my news." In fact, someone who's my age. Of course, I'm 29, but you know what I mean. Like maybe a couple of years ago, was like, oh yeah, I just get everything on TikTok, and that used to be the way that when someone said like, oh, I just get all my news on YouTube, I'm like, what news? I mean, what are you watching on or on YouTube? This is, we're way past that. People actually do hang out on and call it X or Facebook, and your news is going to vary based on who you're connected to and algorithms, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if something like this, which is hey, we've got a crisis right now, all hands on deck, if you can help, please do, is a really, really good way for TikTok to say, hey, we're doing something good for the community. And for people who hang out on TikTok more than they hang out anywhere else, if you see something like that, you're kind of like, oh, this is actually serious.
I will say this. I'm a little not suspicious, but I'm a little
skeptical.
Not skeptical, but I'm a little worried that this is being done solely by TikTok. One of the things that Amber Alerts works so well for is it's done on everyone's phone in the area, and so it's up to the carrier has like an obligation to do it. Does TikTok have a legal obligation other than their willingness to do it, right? Is there something like, oh, you really got to put this out there because it's an emergency? One day you get like, yeah, maybe not. It's. I'm not sure if this is something that you want to leave up to a social media platform rather than, a governmental agency that says everyone needs to broadcast this, regardless of the app, regardless of the whatever that person's doing.
Yeah, I'm for it, Roger, because I think it's one of these things where it is already being done by the government on your cell phone. It's already being done by the government on terrestrial broadcast. This is TikTok saying, hey, we have a lot of people who are in our app at all times of the day. It might be better for everybody if we too did the things that NCMEC are putting out. So I think that when we say, well, we want it to be uniform, I think that you allow the NCMEC to to decide what these things are going to look like. They're the ones that are putting out the text messages. They're the ones that are going to be sending the information to TikTok to send out. And this is something that happens relatively quickly. It's not like they get the information and then 2-3 days later they send it out. These things happen within minutes. I think you allow the NCMEC to determine that, hey, we're going to send this to TikTok since they've signed up for it, and TikTok, here's what you need to do to get this out to everyone in this particular in this particular.
And understand, I'm not assigning any malicious intent on TikTok's part. I just think that situation invariably you'll come into a point where maybe for financial reasons TikTok decides like, can't do it anymore. We need the ad credits back because we got to sell those ad spots. So. Again,
but it doesn't.
Even
if that happens,
yeah.
If this is a temporary thing, let's say TikTok does this for 1 year and then never does it again. I mean, that 1 year may help law enforcement.
Again, I'm not upset that this is happening or against it. I think it's definitely a positive movement. I think the conversation really should be looking at like, how do we do this at scale across multiple social media platforms, because it's great that TikTok does it. Someday there might be a different TikTok owner who doesn't think it's that that useful or that imperative to the company's bottom line, and it gets rid of it. Where there's some sort of cohesiveness, and especially when social media platforms are so fractured, making sure that they get in front of the eyeballs is what's important.
Worth noting, Facebook, if you're like, I don't think TikTok is first, you're right. Facebook has been pushing Amber Alerts to users since 2016. Instagram, obviously both owned by Meta, has been doing that since 2022. I don't believe, maybe I'm forgetting, I don't believe I've ever seen an Amber Alert on either network. However,
Neither.
I use Facebook and Instagram almost exclusively on the web, on desktop, which is unusual. I know most people don't.
I don't get them, and I
way.
use them mostly as apps on my phone. And the only Amber Alerts I get are the ones to the telco.
Yeah.
It shows up on
Which
my phone.
also, it's sort of like, the algorithm, if it's like filtering out really important Amber Alerts that we should be all getting, how does that work? And I have to assume every company is looking at this differently. In general, I feel like good step. Yes, it's goodwill on TikTok's part. Like you said, Roger, this could be something that the company says, like, well, somehow it's like costing us too much money, or that kind of thing, and it goes away. But for now, I would love for anybody out there who either has experienced this in either good or not great way on mobile, or maybe you've seen something on Facebook or Instagram, or might see something on TikTok. Let us know. feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. All right, Rob, let's check out the mailbag.
Caleb, a.k.a. Geeko Supremo, had feedback on our story yesterday about AI being integrated at Yum brand chains like Taco Bell. And he writes, previously I worked at the Mermaid Coffee Company, and we had a drive-through. And as the shift leader, I would have been so thankful if I could have taken the team member off the window and had them do anything else. Having to keep someone on the window made closing extra challenging. Also, the voice coming over the headset is generally clear until it isn't. And when it's not, it's a painful pile of what did you say, which can lead to us to an intensely frustrating experience for everyone involved. So I'm not super sad to see this role filled by an AI bot.
Yeah, Caleb had also, and thank you for the note, Caleb. He'd also mentioned going through, I think it was a Taco Bell drive-through, or at least one of the Yum brands, and said, pretty sure that was AI, The voice that I talked to was not the person that I ended up getting the food from. Now, for anybody who works, in any sort of drive-through experience, you be like, well, it's not always the same person. So sometimes the person taking the order is not the person who ends up giving you your food out the window. But Caleb, this is good intel. And this is kind of what we were talking about yesterday. There's got to be a way for something like AI, not only the drive-through experience, but using this as an example to pull he was saying that, closing up the Mermaid coffee shop. So much better if all hands are, mopping up the floors and, doing all the stuff that, is required for prep for the next morning, rather than somebody being tied to that window.
And yeah, I typically find the most restaurants that use automation in their restaurants, be it fast food or whatever, typically do so because they want to use that human body for something else instead of taking orders at the front. It's either making food or in this case of my local Taco Bell dealing with the drive-thru.
Yeah. Well, again, feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com is where to send all thoughts about everything we talk about, or something you would like us to talk about in El Futuro. All right, Rob, we've got some show title submissions. What do we got?
So yeah, folks, you have been submitting your titles over at dtns.showbot.tv, and during the show, we've got some pretty good ones here. So I'm just going to read through the list and pick out a couple of them. We've got ChatSUS from G James B. The kids don't seem to learn on laptop, JPEG 84. Apple wants the snob appeal. Zoe brings bacon. Mm-hmm. And Apple TV not a plus for its wallet.
Oh,
also JPEG
that's
84. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, Sarah, what did we decide to go with?
We went with ChatSUS. That's ChatSUS. if we're using the GPT model from G James B. G James B. Yeah. We haven't picked a show title from you in a while, if ever. Other people have been on a roll, so thank you so much for the submissions from everybody. Before we thank some of our other folks, Rob, Roger, and I are going to be on the show tomorrow with Andrea Jones-Rooy. We're talking with her about a lot more tomorrow. But yeah, what do we all have going on for the weekends?
It's yard work time.
Time.
Spring is coming.
Spring is sprung.
The spring start tonight? Today's the 20th, right? Does it start tonight or is it tomorrow night?
I don't know.
So yeah, we're right there on spring. So yeah, I want to have a leaf blower and a couple of batteries just blowing all the acorns and all the I don't have too many leaves anymore, but all the just the other yard crap that's in the yard out.
Yep.
So that the grass can start to grow. So hopefully it'll be warm this weekend. We had our warm, like it was in the 70s earlier this week, and now it's kind of cooled off. It's only in the 40s. So hopefully by the weekend it'll cool back up. But yeah, that is what I'm doing this weekend, is a whole bunch of yard work.
I mean, that's sort of the beauty of spring in not really LA, but in many
yard work.
No, not yard work, but just sort of the beauty of just being like Scott Johnson yesterday, who lives in Salt Lake City. He was like, it was 25 degrees today. Tomorrow it's going to be 70. You never know. It's the plants are coming alive. The weather's erratic. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a time for things to start blooming and for me to start pulling out weeds, a lot of weeds. But before I do that this week, I want to give a shout out to everyone in the Twitch chat that's been supporting us. Zoe Brings Bacon and DJ Fission. DJ Fission cheered us on with 361 bits. Thank you very much.
Yay!
PC Mousy, who resubscribed with Prime. They've been subscribed for 52 months. Of course, Zoe Brings Bacon always cheering us on with bits. Also want to give a shout out to Leminar Rainbow, gave us a $3
Thanks,
sticker.
Leminar.
Yeah, and thank you one and all. It's always amazing to have such an engaged group of people watching the show, but also contributing to our conversation.
Indeed.
Live streams are so fun, are they not?
They are.
I love them.
Actually watching us do what we do while we do it. It is so cool.
I was actually talking, we're all very used to this. I was talking to a friend the other day, and they were like, how do you do it, though? I mean, just every day at the same time, every day. And I'm like, that keeps me sane. That actually is like, this is how my day is actually structured better than if I was just like willy-nilly by myself. I wouldn't get anything done.
I think of that, but then I think of all the people who've taken up residence in Las Vegas because they're signed a contract to do like nightly shows, whether they're like Celine Dion or Adele or where they're just needing to perform almost every single night.
But if you like the performance and you like the content, I mean, if you're Celine Dion and you're like, I love this song, I'm never going to get tired of singing the song.
No, but it's tax. You know what I mean? It's very taxing.
Oh, it's taxing. Oh, yeah. No, I'm not saying that we don't work hard.
Yeah.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if someone was like, I don't know, DTNS Live starts, I don't know, whenever we're all ready, we'd never get it done.
Yeah, that makes it easier. I mean, even though this is fun, and I think the three of us, we would be doing this similar stuff in our spare time if we weren't doing it for a living, because it's just fun. But the fact that we are doing it for a living, kind of, there is a job aspect of it that we know we're going to do a pre-show at this time. We know that we're going to do this at this time. We know that we're going to, here's the 27 different places I'm going to go look for tech headlines that happened today. You kind of get into a routine of doing the same thing over and over again. So knowing that we're going to be live at 4 Eastern Standard Time, 2000 UTC, or is it 2100 now? I can't remember.
It's 20.
It's 20. It's 2000 UTC. Knowing that that's when we're going to be doing it, it just makes it possible because we've got, we're the three faces on the day, but there's a whole bunch of moving parts behind this that everybody is kind of working in conjunction with.
More faces moving the parts.
Exactly.
Just imagine
physically moving the parts.
Yeah, just disembodied faces.
I always tell people, when they're like, I just don't know how you do this. I'm like, I don't know. It keeps you honest in a way. I mean, it's sort of like maybe you go to an office and you're not doing podcasting. It doesn't matter what you're doing, but you've got a standing meeting with your boss at 1 p.m. every Thursday. It's like you show up. You can't show up at 1:15. That's not going to fly. So, on a daily basis, it keeps me grounded anyway.
And like I said, it's so fun. It's just fun.
Yeah, we're lucky, and we're lucky to have all of you listening and watching.
Well, folks, if you want a recap of the week's tech headlines with insights on how technology affects and disaffects communities of color, then check out the Tech John, where hosts Robb, Dunewood, Stephanie Humphrey, and Terrence Gaze dive into the tech stories of the week, delivered from points of view you don't always hear in mainstream media. New episodes land Tuesday afternoons. You can find it wherever you get your podcast or visit the Tech John. That's the Tech JAWN.com.
That Robb Dunewood guy, he sounds pretty cool.
He's a pretty handsome man.
I've heard he is awesome.
Yeah, good
And he wears
beard.
Adidas jackets like once or
Yeah.
twice a month too.
Seems pretty smart. Adidas jackets. I mean, what's not to like? Tech John, great show. Do check it out, everybody. TechJohn.com. As far as us, you can watch us live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. As Rob mentioned, 2000 UTC. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Of course, we're on demand, but for those who join us live, so happy to have you. Come on back tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow, speaking of, with Andrea Jones-Rooy talking about transformative use of AI in medicine. That'll be a good one. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.